Welcome to this case study session on building credibility with the investor community during a year of societal and business disruption. In this session, we'll hear how during a time of massive disruption, Pearson, the world's leading learning company, introduced not just a new chief executive, but a new strategy and organisational structure to the market, painting an ambitious vision of the business's future driven by a bold new strategy. Central to their communication plans was building investor confidence during these uncertain times. So we'll also hear how Pearson used the company's long-standing purpose as the foundation for their narrative, a purpose that in many ways is more relevant today than ever. We'll also look at how companies are increasingly turning to their purpose as a narrative foundation for corporate audiences to provide continuity in a time of rapid change. Now I'm delighted to introduce your main speaker, Joe Russell, SVP of Investor Relations, Corporate and Financial Communications at Pearson. Joe's been an SVP at Pearson since 2017. Prior to that, she was Director of Investor Relations at Whitbread, where she presided over 30 trading statements and year-end results. I'll leave you to work out how long that equates to for yourselves. She also set up the Women in Whitbread Forum to champion gender diversity, an issue which I think is on everyone's radar today. Prior to Whitbread, Joe led the IR team at Mothercare and was also a managing director at JP Morgan Cazenove. And let me introduce myself. I'm Simon Gittings, Creative Director at Investis Digital. I've been helping companies tell their corporate story across digital channels for over 20 years and was fortunate enough to work with the Pearson team on their new corporate website, which we'll hear more about in a moment. So over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Simon. I'm delighted to be here today to talk about Pearson. Pearson has long understood the value of learning and what it does to people's lives. In fact, our very purpose is to help everyone achieve their potential through learning. We enable tens of millions of learners per year across the world to maximise their success. We are home to some of the best talent. We have over 20,000 employers, all of who are passionate about working towards achieving our purpose. In terms of financials, we delivered revenue of just under $3.5 billion last year and adjusted operating profit of $313 million. And we have global scale. We offer end-to-end learning solutions across the world with a presence in some 200 markets. And as you can see from the next slide, the opportunity ahead of us is vast. The global learning market is around £5 trillion today, and is expected to grow to £7 trillion by 2030. But what's interesting is the market is only 3% digital today. The drivers of growth are two things. One is a burgeoning middle class, and secondly is longer careers. This is driving a lifetime of informal learning, particularly for people who want to upskill and reskill. People are living longer. People are wanting multiple different jobs, and therefore there is demand for lifelong learning. And trend we have seen, and which has accelerated over the past few years. And Pearson is in a strong position to seize these opportunities through the depth and breadth of our experience and the expertise which we have across the entire lifelong learning spectrum. The investments we have made in technology to deliver the Pearson Learning Platform and through the integration of our own intellectual property, content, products and assessments. All of this enables Pearson to be one of the few companies who can offer our customers the entire end-to-end solution. And as you can see on the next page, we truly believe that the future of learning is digital. We appointed a new chief executive, Andy Bird, in October 2020, and Andy totally understands this. Andy came from Disney and understands the strength of brands, the strength of direct-to-consumer, and what digital and technology can do for today. And our strategy, he's identified 3 global market opportunities for Pearson. The first is the drive in demand for online learning. The second is the workforce skills gap, with more and more demand for employers and employers to upskill and reskill. And the third is the continuing demand for accreditation and certification. In addition to this, he's also going to reorganise Pearson into 5 global divisions, which will enable us to take advantage of these opportunities. It'll also enable us to be more agile. It'll enable us to be more digital, and it'll also enable us to be more flexible in achieving our ultimate goal. Furthermore, he has strengthened the executive team. He recently hired a new CMO, Lynn Frank, who spent years at Time Warner and truly understands what a direct-to-consumer business looks like. She will encompass and co-run a division which will enable us to deliver direct digital experiences across the business. And with all this in mind, we wanted a new corporate website which showcased the new person, the new digital era. I had the pleasure of working with investors at my former company, Whitbread, and they helped us build a corporate website. So when we spoke to investors and asked if they would help us do the same at Pearson, typically they would say that would take 6 months. We gave them the challenge of being able to deliver a new corporate website in 3 months. We worked and had multiple stakeholders internally. We had the investor relations section, we had the media section, we had the career section, and also the sustainability section. And investors worked seamlessly across all these different stakeholders to deliver on time within the 3 months a new corporate website. We also needed to encompass the fact that we have a number of businesses both in the US, global and the UK. So we wanted it to have both the US and UK English. And this was all achieved on the date. And as you can see from the next slide, it's a huge improvement. The consumer experience is much better. It allows us to showcase beautiful photography, enables navigation of the website to be much clearer, enables to have an investment thesis so people can truly understand what Pearson's about, what the direction of travel is, and clearly encompasses our sustainability. The next part, I believe, is going to be phase 2 of the website, which we're going to work with the team on, and which will involve a significant expansion of the sitemap, and which we will launch in June this year. You can see on the next slide, we also leveraged Investis Digital platform for our full year results. Andy unveiled his strategy to the city alongside our full year results in March this year, and we wanted to have the time to pre-record this strategy to really showcase what the brand was going to be about, what Pearson stood for, and to make sure we use state-of-the-art video technology to showcase all our divisions. On the back of this enabled us to showcase the presentation on the day and then run a live Q&A session. I had the pleasure of being the moderator on the day, and the digital platform was so easy to use. There's a chat function where the analysts can input their questions, and I, as the moderator, had clear visibility of all the questions coming through. I was able to attribute the question to respective analysts and also to the banks, but it also gave me time to look at these questions and make sure that I get presented these questions to both Andy and Sally in a sort of easy manner, so they had time themselves to answer the questions. And you can see on the final slide, Pearson takes a holistic approach to strategy, purpose and ESG. On our new website, Pearson's strategy sits under the purpose and ESG section of the website. This strategic placement is a testament to the key role played by purpose as the overarching North Star of our strategy, with ESG integrated throughout the company. This is a key focus. Pearson is defined by its clarity of purpose, using that to bring business strategy, business performance and ESG impact under one umbrella. And by design, our new Sustainable Business Plan 2030 is integral to Pearson's business, and everyone in the business will and will want to play a role in achieving those goals. And with that, I'll hand back to Simon.
Thank you so much for that, Joe. And just picking up on Joe's theme there around purpose, strategy, and how companies can tell that story effectively. I don't think anyone on this call or listening in today will argue with the fact that purpose matters now more than ever. I think the importance and increasing importance of company purpose is clear, particularly in communications. But I think over the last year, what we have seen as observers of the corporate landscape, if you like, is how companies have been relying on their purpose to navigate what have been very difficult times, and to help them to guide and often make difficult decisions around where they focus their business moving forward. So I think that purpose-based narrative, as we've seen and heard from Pearson, is incredibly important, and I think we'll see more companies using that as their North Star in their communications moving forward. Of course, the other thing that COVID has caused companies to do is to reevaluate, just as Pearson has done, their strategy to reflect the new norms in which we're operating. Really around thinking around how their strategy can really deliver against their purpose, rather than the two things, in some ways, in the old world of kind of ESG and philanthropy, you had business strategy on the one hand driving shareholder value, and you had kind of ESG agenda on the other driving stakeholder value. And I think now we're seeing strategies just like Pearson's that really bring those two agendas together, stakeholder and shareholder, hand in hand, driving sustainable growth for a business. So that's a key thing we're seeing in the marketplace. I just want to make the kind of the point here also that when we talk about purposeful communication, we hear about it a lot. Every ad agency probably has it at the first thing that they mention to every new customer, but it's not just about Gen Z consumers. We're seeing a real sort of upswell from the market in corporate communications, specifically from investors, from the media, from concerned consumers, from everybody wanting to see companies really delivering against societal driven purpose. So I don't think it's just a trend. It's not just a way of getting people to buy more. It's actually a way of getting people to buy into the long-term future of businesses and that we need to drive society forward. But having said all that, which companies are communicating their purpose effectively to their corporate stakeholders? Which companies have managed the transition to new strategic directions well, as Pearson's have? So let's find out. And I'll start by talking about purpose, just by quoting Colin Mayer, who's head of the business school at Oxford University. I love his way of encapsulating what purpose and business mean. The purpose of a business is to produce profitable solutions to the problems of people and planet. I don't think anyone could say it quite as succinctly or as well as he does. He also goes on to say in the same speech that they need to do so whilst not causing any harm to people and planet as well, which I think is more traditional kind of focus of ESG. So how can companies in the narrative that they tell, the story they tell about themselves, join the dots from purpose to profit? I think historically what we may have seen when companies talk about purpose is just focusing on them making a positive difference. It's almost like the easy statement for them to make. We're going to help more people to learn. We're going to help more people to be connected together. We're going to provide more energy for the world. It's quite easy to talk about that making a positive difference element. But really, to turn that into a profitable business statement and story, we need to provide the context of what that company is good at, that enables it to meet the needs of the world and those changing needs, as we'll see in a moment when we deep dive a little bit more into how Pearson talk about themselves, how they can do making a positive difference whilst eliminating harm to people and planet. And, they are businesses, they're not charities. They need to be able to deliver a sustainable profit, because if they don't, they won't be able to continue to make that positive difference. So as we've been talking about Pearson, and it's been odd when I talk about companies that communicate this well and join those dots, not to mention them. And I love the fact that they talk about a bold new strategy for a brave new world. Really kind of encapsulates, I guess, the energy and excitement that we felt working with the Pearson team during their website project. And I'll just focus in on their homepage for a moment on their new corporate website. You'll see that they immediately bring to your attention their purpose, how they want to make people's lives better, through delivering better learning experiences. That's kind of front and center of that homepage narrative, backed up by, as I said, a bold new strategy for a brave new world, and contextualizing, the three pillars that they're focused on in delivering against that strategy. And then if we dive into the strategy element in a little bit more detail, one of the things to note, as Joe mentioned, is that actually at the very top level of the Pearson website, we have a dedicated section, our purpose and ESG performance. And that's quite unusual. Often, we find sustainability at the top level, purpose embedded within the company section. Really, it's an acknowledgement that purpose, ESG performance, but also business performance go together and sit naturally in one place in the narrative and in their website. So we can see here, I've just highlighted what I think is quite important on the Pearson website when they're talking about their strategy, is to articulate why they have introduced a new strategy, why they need it. And that's because they are responding to their changing marketplace. Their purpose connects the now, the future, and the past. That's a continuous element in the story of the business, but the strategy is changing as the market in which they operate is changing. I think more companies, when they introduce a new strategy, need to be clearer to the market as to what's driving that strategic narrative, that strategic change, other than just potentially a change in leadership or people at the top of the business. There's a real reason behind the strategic change. And then if we look over to the right of the screen, you'll see where they talk about the delivering the outcomes that matter against their strategy, enabling sustainable growth, obviously vital lifeblood to any successful business, but then hand in hand, driving shareholder value and contributing to a more equitable world. So putting, again, those two elements, business and ESG performance, side by side as the two things that are required to drive the sustainable growth of their business. I think a lot of other companies could learn, from the Pearson example of just how to join that narrative together. One of the other companies that I think also does a good job of joining the business and ESG agenda together, Vodafone, they talk about their new social contract to create a gigabit society for all. And really, the way that comes together is by saying, as we've all seen from COVID, we are all, like it or not, reliant on digital connectivity. And that's increasingly what Vodafone provide, whether it's through fixed or mobile communications. And as 5G becomes more intrinsic to not just our communications, but the way that business works, fundamentally connecting factories and vehicles and everything around us together, the importance of connectivity providers to driving society is going to become increasingly vital. And they make a very good point of their role in society from a business perspective, but at the same time providing inclusion for everybody so no one is left behind in the digital revolution. And again, just as Pearson have done, they have top level sections where they describe their purpose and bring together business and ESG strategy in one place. The final company I'm just going to draw your attention to in terms of talking about purpose and strategy working together is BP, who we all know announced their new reimagining energy purpose last year with their drive towards net zero by 2050. Shortly followed this year by Shell, of course. But the thing I like around what BP have done is the way they have linked every element of that narrative, all of the dots, if you like, by topping and tailing a lot of existing content to make it relevant to their new purpose-driven narrative. So they have a new purpose section. Obviously, they've rewritten their strategy, but then they've done a good job of taking, for example, their existing BP magazine section and relabeling it and reorganizing it to reflect their new reimagining energy purpose-driven agenda. So it's the old content, if you like, but reframed to tell a new narrative. And that works very well. And I think when a lot of companies are looking at embedding their purpose-driven narrative across their website or a new strategic narrative across their website, it can be a very daunting task, but it doesn't mean you have to rewrite everything from scratch. You can take existing content, repurpose and reframe to support that new narrative, just as BP have done. So I'm just now going to look at a couple of key numbers around how companies are communicating purpose on their corporate websites. And you can see here from this table that we've looked at what we call our Connect IQ Global 100. It's the most capitalized what companies across the globe. We've taken the top 100 of those, and we've compared those to the FTSE 100 and the NYSE 100. And you can see in terms of companies that talk about their purpose on their website, nearly 70% of the Global 100 do, which I guess we wouldn't be too surprised by. But interestingly, that drops to around 40% of companies listed on the NYSE 100. There's a lot less emphasis on purpose we're seeing across those US companies. But what is interesting across the board is how few companies are prepared to stand up to their purpose by putting some numbers against it, by quantifying their ambitions, to help so many more people by this date in the future. Very few companies at the moment are hanging their head or hanging their hat, should I say, and saying, this is what we will achieve through our purpose. Vodafone, Pearson, for example, bucking that trend and putting some numbers behind their claims, which I think is going to become increasingly important for us to believe and that these purpose-driven narratives are real, and also to allow us to track the progress of these companies against them. We've spoken about purpose. We should also obviously speak about strategy. And we've done some similar work looking at who talks about their strategy well within their corporate websites. Actually, amongst the FTSE 100, almost 3/4 of companies talk about their strategy, probably driven in part by our reporting regulations in the UK, which obviously make every company think about its strategy, even though it might not talk about it on its website. But again, we can see how within the US, far fewer companies make, only 17% actually describe their strategy to the marketplace through their corporate website, which when you think about it is quite shocking. And again, we can see similarly low levels of quantification of those targets. If you're interested, having heard about the Connect IQ Global 100 companies, we're looking at the top digital corporate communicators across the world. If you want to know who are the top performers across the board, across all forms of narrative, investor comms, media comms, sustainability, reputation, and recruitment, Shell is our standout leader at the moment with a score of 76%, shortly followed by another oil company, BP. We've got Nestle, we have BSF, and also Eni, who you may not know. They're an Italian headquartered oil and gas company. But you can see here, and you'll be able to download this presentation afterwards, how their scores kind of compare against key areas of corporate communication on their websites, based on 300 criteria that we measure at Investis with our Connect IQ methodology. And you'll also be able to see in the download the top 100 global corporate communicators and how they score across the board. You can have a look for your own company maybe in that listing. And if you're interested, please do get in contact with us at Investis Digital and we can go into more detail about your company's score. So what are the lessons that we've learned, hopefully, from this presentation, other than the fact that Pearson set us at Investis quite a deadline to deliver their new corporate website? I hope that you'll agree that their new corporate website does the job. It really helps to communicate their story, and we are looking forward to working with them in the future on building out that narrative over the next year. But what have we learned today? Well, first of all, it's important when companies are talking about their purpose that they join the dots between purpose, strategy, and profit. That's very important, to make their narrative seem real for the investor and other corporate communities. That they provide context for their business's role in society. They don't just assume that we know how they will be able to contribute. That they make all of it real by putting numbers and critically timeframes to their ambitions and progress. That they embed that purpose-led narrative across every part of their digital presence, not just a throwaway statement on their homepage. And they can also look, as Pearson have done, to build interest and build momentum in their new purpose-driven narrative through a live event where they can kind of announce that to the market and kind of spark interest amongst their audiences. If you would like more and you want to access this deck and our full set of resources, please do check out the Investis Digital Partner area on the PRWeek Connect event platform or visit resources.investisdigital.com PRWeek Connect. Thank you very much to Joe and thank you to listening today. Goodbye.